Hello and welcome to the AskDrBen podcast. I'm your host, Ben Johnson. As a holistic-minded physician, I've spent the last 20 years looking outside the box and conducting research to find the true causes of skin conditions and other diseases. And while the focus of my work has been on aesthetic medicine and unlocking the secrets to reversing skin damage, this podcast will also include many other exciting revelations pertaining to you and your family's health and well-being. So let's get started. Well, hey everybody, can you believe it? I am back in front of a microphone after a pretty healthy hiatus, and I appreciate all the requests to restart my podcasts, and I just want to say thank you to everyone, all the kind words and support that I'm given through our professional forum called the Mastermind Forum, and all of the people out there that have found my podcast to be helpful for them in their lives. I do feel like that this is information that is just simply not out there. I have certainly a unique perspective. For those that don't know much about my history, I've been formulating wellness and skincare products for approximately 25 years. And I've been, while I am technically a general practitioner, I have been heavily involved either through owning laser clinics or through being what would be a quasi medical overseer of the osmosis philosophy through my professional network, which is made up of practitioners, including estheticians, nurses, doctors, and naturopaths and other practitioners. And so, I guess by default, after 25 years in this business, I do feel I'm qualified to call myself a skin expert. And I know that, sure, the dermatologists of the world out there are like, whoa, brother, that's for board certified dermatology. Well, as you're going to hear from me over these many podcasts coming, the medical system is putting out information that is simply incorrect, and they're offering devices and or medications or advice that I have found to be at minimum not helpful, and in the most egregious cases very harmful to the people that are seeking out help. And listen, I so appreciate, because I get emails from all of you, and again, I'll put my email out there, drben@osmosisbeauty.com. I help people from all around the world every day. That's my main role right now as the CEO of Osmosis, because it's my favorite thing to do. I try to stay out of the weeds for a fair number of operational things, which has proven to be a little bit challenging at times. But I find that through this interaction with you, the users of my products, and or you, the struggling individual who has a skin condition or a health condition that they just have been unable to find answers for, I found that through my interaction with you and the professionals that I work with, I've really learned a lot about how the human body works, what is the source of disease, and I try to explain to people, because everybody starts off with, well, show me your credentials, where are your published papers, where are your, not everyone starts off with that. I mean, most physicians will start off with that if they're giving consideration to what I have to say. They want the published papers and the research evidence. And we do have some research evidence, but that's a system that was specifically designed by the Rockefellers, believe it or not, in the early 1900s, as a method of making sure that whatever message they want put out there, whatever teaching strategy they want implemented in the medical schools, they have control over. So how do you do that? You put a tremendous amount of peer pressure on the physicians that graduate. You do a tremendous amount of brainwashing through medical school to convince them that medications are the primary way by which you're going to help your patients. And they limit our education on the sources of disease. And also, they limit our education on how the body really works based on the latest understanding from all aspects of scientific literature. And in particular, I find there's a shortage of knowledge in the area of nutrition, in the area of the human microbiome, and in the area of quantum physics. And so all these things present as a problem, and then to really bring it home, the powers that be control the publishing network, the university professor messages what research is actually done, because of course research is done through funding. So the funders control the research, and then of course they control the publications, and that leads to a monopoly in ideas. And that unfortunately has led us to this point now where I would argue that a majority of Americans and a majority potentially of the worldwide citizenship have lost faith in the medical system. And that's actually proven out in some studies that were done on where people seek their information first. So as odd as it is, because I had no intention when initially being trained after medical school in sports medicine, I had no intention of getting into aesthetics. And I had no idea that my journey into aesthetics would create all the challenges that it did. And that pushed me into alternative medicine, I'm going to call it. And always remaining open to ideas. And so I applaud you if you're here today on this podcast, because it is true that, if you don't keep questioning everything, you should question everything. You will be led. You will become, as many people refer to the human population, sheep in a system that does not have your best interest at heart. And I guess, yeah, I think throughout these podcasts, you're going to hear me sound a bit conspiratorial. It's like, how do we, when we're presenting new ideas for health and well-being and rejuvenation and beauty that differ from the mainstream, you already are facing quite an uphill battle, right? Because still today, the vast majority of people believe that if there's a skin issue, the dermatologist is the expert that you want to go to if you have a skin problem. And surely they're going to have the answers. And as we're seeing, very often they don't have the answers to the problems. They're very good at providing the diagnoses, whatever unique skin condition they want to describe that you have. Well, that condition was created by this very same medical system that wants to control ideas. And the whole idea is once you name a disease, then you can actually start working on drugs through, in America, the FDA system, to get approval for drugs that then go into the insurance system, and these pharmaceutical companies make their billions and billions through that method. But what we know is that it's much more complicated than that. And my response to those people that say, I just don't have enough published studies, I don't have enough degrees behind my name, I don't have enough board certifications, I don't have the fellowships. What I would tell you is pause for a minute and start looking throughout the world for results. Results are, at the end of the day, the telling point of whether or not somebody has the right answers. And man, the internet is full of all these ideas of people that tell you to take this wellness supplement or that wellness supplement, or they're telling you crazy stuff like take medications that are poisonous and they will rejuvenate you in some indirect way. And so it gets very challenging to find the truth through all the stories that are out there. And once again, I say go back to the results. You're going to want to look at each company that says they have a unique idea, challenge that. And, one of the unique things about osmosis is almost all of our ideas are new. That is correct. Most of the world is just repeating the same old storylines or some new storyline that is, following the same script, if you will. So, the idea, for example, most of the time medicine tells you we don't really know what is causing this, but it's definitely a skin problem. For example, let's go with rosacea. They might tell us that rosacea is either some sort of a vascular dysregulation, which just simply means the body's losing control of its ability to constrict and dilate blood vessels. And so the skin turns red for some physiologic abnormality inherent in the skin. Or they tell us stories like it's the Demodex mite that is the cause of this skin condition. Or maybe they might think your acne is caused by a fungus or a unique bacteria. There are a lot of ideas that are put out there, and they just don't hold up to scrutiny. So what I would tell you is if you are looking at the following podcasts with a critical eye, which I encourage you to do, put my theories to the test, examine them, and let's see if they don't continually prove out time after time. And I will tell you, our success rate still remains in the high 90% as far as clearing some of the most serious health and skin conditions out there. And I remain consistently involved in the cases that struggle to make sure that the right protocols were done. And so you can count on the fact that if you're entering into the osmosis world, not only is your esthetician or health practitioner on the cutting edge of medicine because they're open to the new ideas, because clearly the old ideas are life expectancy shrinking, guys. How crazy is that? Our life expectancy has been on the rise for decades, and now we are on the decline. And so we have to ask ourselves, and we will get into the details of that at some point, what is going wrong with society? And that leads me, I think, to this next wave. So if you enter into the osmosis system, know that I will eventually, if someone of the practitioners you're involved with, or if you're going, direct through the retail product line on our website and you have questions, Dr. Ben at Osmosis Beauty. Listen, I answer those questions every day. I answer everyone's questions. I take the time to analyze your supplements. I'm not going to lie. Try to keep your emails short. It's really hard on me if you write a couple of pages of medical history. Medical history is helpful, but short and sweet, supplements and medications, and a picture of your skin. Because the other thing I've learned in all this process is your skin actually has very distinct patterns that tell us a lot about what the causes are behind your health or skin imbalances. So going beyond that, and going beyond the idea that, our results stand up to scrutiny, what's really most important is osmosis is in the business of changing lives. I think that is a big part of the inspiration for a lot of the estheticians that join us as professionals and join the team and learn some of this new knowledge. And that's certainly my motivation. And if you're wondering, who is this guy, this general practitioner from Colorado, who thinks he knows better than the entire world of scientists, the entire world of physicians? What sort of egomaniacal physician would consider those? I would tell you that actually I got here through humility. I got here through putting through the trial by fire. I got here through faith. I got here through trusting that the information that I kept, the more I would dig with an earnest heart, with a humble heart, appreciating that, hey, I just learned a whole lot of stuff in medical school and residency, that I'm going to use what I need to use. Obviously, understanding human physiology, anatomy is a big bonus. But I'm going to put aside all the fixed ideas on how things operate and humble myself down to just a simple person asking questions. How can I get to the truth of this matter? How can I help these people with this condition? And when you come at it from that perspective with and I don't want to sound too Pollyannish, but it's really with a humble and open heart, I believe that is how answers are found. And that is why I have been given the opportunity to share these philosophies and this understanding, and given the opportunity to formulate products that can actually treat most of the conditions in the world today. Yeah, I know that sounds grandiose, but if I wasn't living it every day, I wouldn't be so confident. And it took, as I mentioned, a lot of faith, because I am a Christian. I do believe that the direction that my life has taken was divinely inspired. I do believe that it took several leaps of faith. Remember, I just jumped out of residency and jumped right into owning a chain of clinics, which was clearly not my end goal, because that ended badly. and then I just leaped into skincare of all things, and then leaped into wellness and then I think with that, the faith that this information is real. And then through this whole process of muscle testing, and not even realizing in the beginning when I was muscle testing, how much muscle testing relies on the Holy Spirit. And so, for those of you that are listening to this that are atheist or agnostic, I hope, this language is not offensive to you. You don't have to subscribe to Christianity to believe that osmosis is the right choice to find, remarkable solutions for and really, one of my favorite things about it is to empower you as the patient, as the consumer, to know where all of the minefields are in this world, and to try to be able to avoid them. And I'm going to, tell you right now that, gluttony will get you in trouble. There are definitely behaviors that pride will get you in trouble, because, I think a lot of people let pride prevent them from being open to new ideas. And so these are things that I had to learn to avoid. And as I said, going into muscle testing, I could not do the work that I do helping everyone around the world through emails, through cases online, in my professional forum. I couldn't do what I'm doing without relying on my intuitive inspirations through muscle testing and my now more recent understanding of the involvement of what is the Holy Spirit in offering new insight. So, if you ever wondered why animals know when to start migrating to avoid huge catastrophes or storms, and why you see birds flying and moving in unison, and why all the behaviors of so many of the insects and like ants and bees and things that we study and we marvel at, like how do these creatures know how to behave in such a way to survive? What I would tell you is that's all Holy Spirit in everything throughout nature. And that wisdom that you think is just innate, somehow genetically built in to that system is not from genetics, in fact, but it is this understanding. So when I read the medical literature, I read it relying on my intuitive guidance to understand, maybe read between the lines in a lot of cases, or when I see a case and I get the clues. Let me tell you something. When you send a case to me and I'm going to think of a good example, and you don't even realize it, but there was one sentence you might throw in the explanation of what's going on with you that, doesn't seem that important, but for me, it triggers an understanding instantly through that information. And I apologize, my computer is popping in email noises there. But when you see, it's amazing to me how, you can get to the bottom of a certain problem. Like sometimes I will spend a lot of time trying to understand where the source of this poison is that is causing someone's liver to create liver rosacea. And I'm trying to figure out, is it from formaldehyde and new flooring? Is it from the poisons they're putting in our tap water? Is it from something they're inhaling at work? There's a lot of analysis that comes. And if my muscle testing wasn't so consistent and precise, and it's not 100% because there are constant distractions going through your mind. And if you let the human side of your mind pop ideas into your head, that's more often than not going to lead you down the wrong path. So it's just really important to go neutral, to trust. In my case, I trust in the wisdom of the Holy Spirit, and to let those answers show up. And so I am constantly defaulting to that and remaining in gratitude. Let me see if I can actually mute. I think that might have just done it. I should have done it earlier. And so I just want you to know that's where it's all coming from. So let's get to a final piece of understanding as we get into the meat and potatoes, if you will, of understanding how to stay young and healthy in this toxic world. And that is to understand why all of this is happening. Why is our life expectancy shrinking? Why does it seem like acne is more pervasive than ever? Why is rosacea more pervasive than ever? Why is eczema more pervasive than ever? Why is high cholesterol exploding? Why are there so many deaths in the young people of today? Why I could go down a long list of all the diseases we're presented with, and I'll just tell you that our bodies are unbelievable and respond to a lot of things. So it takes quite a bit of toxicity to alter healthy performance in the body. And one of the ways that we are tricked in today's world is when you are slowly being poisoned, and yeah, I'm using those words, we are being poisoned, when you are slowly being poisoned, it gets a lot harder to point to tap water, to point to the vast majority of foods you buy in your grocery store, to point to the just about 99% of all medications. It gets harder and harder to identify the unique source, and this is intentional in my belief. And so, why is this happening? Why does America use, I think the number is twice as many pesticides in their foods as anyone else in the world? Why is it that our junk food, which is 90% of a grocery shelf supply, why is our junk food in America, why does it have twice as many poisons in it, if not 5 times as many poisons in it? And they will make the exact same food in Europe with not entirely different, but a substantially different ingredient deck. Why does America get the benefit of all of these toxic materials? And the answer is because it's intentional. So, stay with me on this. I hope I don't lose people in this intro to 2024 on this, because I know a lot of people, the bigger the conspiracy, the harder it is to think it's possible. How could it be? There would have to be so many people with nefarious intentions for the world to be attempting to harm us in all these different ways. It would have to pass so many boards of oversight. It would have to pass the scrutiny of all these physicians graduated from, after studying all about the human body for several years. It would have to, how does it pass the oversight of, let's say, Congress and the FDA and the OTC and the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, and the CDC? Like, how could every system be corrupt? Well, the answer is through very consistent, hard, determined effort by the most powerful people and families in the world that have developed a level of wealth that is probably not comprehensible to most people, and want to maintain the power and control over the world. And from what I understand, and I can only theorize because the evidence tells us this, and that is they have a disdain for most of humanity. In fact, you can go back to the speeches by Henry Kissinger and great leaders, CEOs, the World Economic Forum and their leadership that graduated the likes of Putin and Obama and Trudeau, and leaders of today and future leaders of tomorrow are graduating from this unheard of 10 years ago World Economic Forum, unheard of by most of the world. And it takes controlling the electoral process. And so what does that involve? Money, right? So you fund the candidates that you want, that you have either blackmail control over or an influence over. You fund those candidates. So you say, but it's a free election, which we can all certainly question that as well. But you control the electoral candidates. Therefore, it doesn't matter who wins, really, because at the end of the day, the winner is still one of the selections of the people that funded that electoral process. And that starts way down at the state level, way down at the mayoral level, and works its way up to the congressional and even the presidential level. And so once you have your people in those places, then you pick who goes on the boards. You pick who gets approved. You pick what are the laws and regulations for how farming is done. So today, in our world today, if you don't use GMO foods, you are cut off from the insurance industry. They have learned the pressure points and they understand how to break farmers down and forcing them to use pesticides. If you don't use pesticides on your farms, you don't get insurance. And so the farmers are forced to use the amounts required, which, like I said, are double the amounts. And we'll get into why, what's so bad about pesticides. I mean, after all, we want to make our crops healthy and vibrant and be free from bugs. Do you? Is that really the goal? I mean, isn't the goal to make the most nutritious food possible? And, with all of the evidence we have about pesticides being carcinogenic, full stop, fully studied, fully proven, with the tremendous number of pesticides having estrogenic properties, meaning they mimic estrogen and therefore cause all kinds of endocrine disruption in your body that leads to early menopause, that leads to menstrual irregularities, that leads to breast cancer, that leads to PCOS. I can go down a long list, and we will be going down a long list of all of the side effects of these chemicals, but it goes beyond pesticides, flavorings, plasticides, stabilizers, preservatives. A huge number of foods contain some really nasty preservatives that end up creating similar havoc, not to mention obesity. Obesity is one of the number one causes of pesticide, one of the early signs of pesticide overexposure, because the body starts storing these pesticides when it starts, the livers accumulates toxins over time. It manages them well in our youth when our liver is thriving, and then over time our liver becomes pickled, and then it doesn't manage these poisons well. And so you end up in a system where if you're constantly being exposed to poisons, the body's going to send them off to fat cells to be isolated and to be less harmful. But some of those fat cells are in the breast, and so that can lead to breast cancer. Sometimes it's fat cells, and it just leads to cellulite. But most importantly, it's a stubborn weight gain, because your liver is got to be pickled in order for all those pesticides have to made it through into the fat cells. And therefore, it's really hard to starve yourself enough of the toxic food. I shouldn't say starve yourself, to keep toxic food out of your world when almost everything has toxins in it these days. And for a long enough period of time that not only does your liver start to decongest from toxins, if you will. By the way, fatty liver, huge problem. I don't know. I think I just heard of a study that said 60% of Americans have fatty liver. What is fatty liver? Well, fats hold toxins as one of their mechanisms or I should say, as one of their purposes. And so when your liver starts accumulating too many toxins, they don't just go to fat in your periphery, they also go to fat in the liver, and that's what causes fatty liver. So your liver has to detox. And no, milk thistle's fine, dandelion is fine, but they don't get the job done. I mean, they do very little. They're very modest in their benefits. So how do you do it? How do you stay away from all the toxins? It's very hard. And this is why obesity is a massive epidemic. And like I said, we'll get into the details of a lot of those things. But just to kind of finish up on this overarching theme, which is, as much as you would like to believe that people in government are your friend, they're not your friend. They're there for their own power, glory, and material gains. If a politician, and then maybe there are a handful of congressmen in the U.S. that actually made it through the system, and they don't have any blackmail on them yet, or however they're standing up to it, that's fine. But they will be removed from the committees. They will be disempowered in Congress, and so they won't have the influence. But the vast majority of the people there, they're going to follow what the people that finance them want. This is what we want you to enact. Remember, most laws are started in Congress by being written by our pharmaceutical companies, our major industrial, the military industrial complex. They write the laws that they then give over to the congressman to then pass, and they pay for the congressman's election committee result. We see all this. This is not a conspiracy. This is straight up in our faces happening to us. But what's not realized in all of this is the people in the highest levels of power would think we have an overpopulation problem. You can talk about the Georgia Guidestones, which got struck by lightning and destroyed. Fascinating little turn of events a few years ago. But the Georgia Guidestones said we need to shrink the population back to 500 million. And like I said, there are many speeches by many powerful people since the early 1900s that I know of, I mean, probably before this, that tell us that overpopulation is the world's problem. And that is not true. It's definitively not true. But that is their justification for shrinking the population. But really, ultimately, what is the goal here? The goal is control. They want a subdued population. You might, for example, wonder, why are they putting fluoride in our tap water and massive amounts in some states? It's pretty crazy how much fluoride they put in our water. And the answer is because it was clinically proven to reduce your drive. It numbs people. They become complacent on fluoride. So the number one reason fluoride is being used is complacency. And this was studied by Hitler and implemented in the U.S. after World War II. How interesting is that, right? And so you wonder, and you know what else I've recently discovered about fluoride is that it actually, I knew it was a neurotoxin, but what I didn't realize is that it affects the pituitary in a unique way, and it actually ends up lowering our growth hormones. So one of the bigger challenges and another cause of obesity, I never had attached fluoride to another cause of obesity, but another cause of obesity is just like we have early menopause, which is a poison, a toxin-related event. Early menopause is not. It's related to either birth control, harming your ovarian health, or it's related more often than not to estrogenic toxins, causing a reduction in your healthy, normal, natural production of estrogen, estradiol, and estriol. There's 3 estrogens, and it doesn't do it equally in all of them. Each toxin has its own unique influence on each individual type of estrogen. And there are some toxins that have an influence on testosterone and so forth. But once you influence estrogen, you have the biggest effect on fertility. And so, boom, now we're using estrogen's toxins to make you less fertile. We're using fluoride to reduce your ambition to fight the system. And we're going to make you fat and lazy in your elder years by doing premature reduction of human growth hormone numbers. So when you reduce estrogen, a lot of times you reduce testosterone because the lower levels of estrogen, when the the body moves back and forth between estrogen and testosterone, and it will lower production levels of testosterone. It'll lower production levels of progesterone. Like, those things are happening as your body is trying to, in every day, consistently rebalance to those effects. But to get back to the theme I want to close out on, which is you just can't trust what is being said by your FDA. By the way, that's all come out. Like, all the corruption within the FDA has all come out. You could look at the studies of antidepressants where they studied, they would have to do literally 10 different clinical trials to find one that showed a slightly better than placebo result so they could get their drug approved. And the FDA walks right in style. Listen, the amount of poisons being put out there today through our FDA system is enough to tell you that you can't trust that system. So we can't trust the FDA. We've seen enough through the pandemic of the CDC revealing its corruption to know that you can't trust the CDC, and you can't trust Congress to pass laws to help you. You can't trust the EPA. So therefore, you just need to know that this toxic world is only getting more toxic. And they're doing what they can to force the medical system to do exactly what they say. I don't know if you know, but even these physicians who are brainwashed from the get-go, even if they start to expand outside the box and go, maybe everything I learned isn't right because what I'm seeing here isn't right. And there are so many physicians out there that were fully in the system that broke free during the pandemic as they watched the corruption in action. And so what has the medical system done? And I know this in particular is happening in California, but it's going to happen in every state around this country of ours, and that is they are going to force doctors to follow the guidelines or lose their medical license. They are going to tell the doctors what to say, think, and do. If you don't follow this, you will lose your license. So there's no longer now, remember, medical school, I don't know, obviously somewhat intentionally, had this natural weeding out process. You had to be pretty darn smart to get into medical school. So already the more intelligent people in our population are going into medical school. But then once in medical school, and by the way they do the testing is they're looking for people who thrive in, I don't know how, it's thrive in a certain style of thinking. I'm very logic-based. You're going to hear all of these discussions here in this podcast series, and you'll see very often I'm like using logic to get to my place, and that's part of how I got into medical school. But because we're so logic-based, and once we define science the way it's defined today, which is clinical study, done, published clinical study, peer-reviewed, if it's not that, it's not right. Once you lock them into that line of thinking, then you end up having some control over them. But what then they said is, yeah, but just in case you were thinking about spinning off and doing your own analysis of what you noticed when you kept putting patients on this drug, this thing was happening, so maybe you're not doing that drug anymore. Well, they're going to take that decision making from you, Dr. Smith. They are going to force through insurance payments that you follow their guideline, or through the medical boards that you follow those guidelines or suffer severe consequences. And that is the tragedy that we face today. So whether you like it or not, and maybe you found me because you were already fully on board with everything I'm saying here, because there's no question that we are a growing minority of people who are going, wait a minute, something's not right and it hasn't been right for a while. What I'm telling you is you've got to break away from the system. So now you might say, well, that's why, Dr. Johnson, I use all these supplements. I am very pro-health. And I mean, a lot of emails I get, they're like, man, I'm taking these 15 supplements because they're so good for me, as I've read on the internet. And I'm just trying to do my body right. And, we could go down a few of the big players here for a hot minute. And that is, so that's why I take my magnesium, because I've read that it is an elixir of longevity and it's an absolute must in any person's daily routine. Or I'm taking probiotics because we've learned how important the microbiome is. So probiotics must be the right answer. Both of those are fallacies. Both of those are incorrect. So not only has the system recognized that we diverted to alternative methodologies and started shutting them down left and right. Like literally, wherever they can, the FDA is coming in and constricting ingredients that work in the supplement industry. And I've had a number of ingredients I've wanted to add to my supplements that the FDA in the last 5 or 10 years has said, oh no, not safe, or yeah, and there's no evidence they're not safe. They've just, what I've come to learn is it's are they effective or not? So when you see public discussion in a big way, a theme going, and I do find that the bigger the trend, the more likely it is to be full of misinformation. In other words, the system gives a voice to the people that are spreading information that the system knows is to their advantage. And again, I'm referring to the system as the powers that be, because they're coming into the supplement world. They're trying to put FDA restrictions on supplements wherever they can for those supplements that are efficacious. And we're going to get into the minefields. But yes, probiotics, all probiotics are bad. And we will explain that in the gut health series. And so this idea that we can turn to supplements was a nice idea and is partially true. But I would tell you at this point in my caseload, a slight majority of my cases are being caused by a slight majority of the cases of skin problems that are presenting to me. And that's most of what's in my professional forum. Is it starts off with a skin problem. Now, they usually have a list of other health issues that we also address, but it usually starts off with, hey, they're coming to me with this weird skin rash. What's going on? And I'm just telling you right now, there's an epidemic of H. pylori, which is identified as a bacteria in the stomach that is related to ulcers in the stomach. And there is an epidemic of H. pylori. And if you want to know how to spot it, look at everyone's nostrils, which doesn't sound particularly fun when I say it out loud. But no, look at their nostrils and around their nostrils. And what you'll see, if you see a bunch of capillaries diving into the sides of their nostril, not capillaries on the side of their nostril, but diving into the skin right around where the nostril comes into the face, if that makes sense. Hopefully that does. So what I'm talking about is the skin around the nostril, not the skin on the nostril, okay? The nasal flares for the anatomical description. If you see redness around there, lining up and going into the nostril, so it's again like right into the opening of the nostril and down halfway on the lip, going around the outside of the mouth in almost like a wedge. And it can look different on different people, but I'm describing the area around the nostril. Like, this is an epidemic. There's people, I see it everywhere. People have got redness in that area and they'll tell you, yeah, my stomach's been giving me some problems. H. pylori leads, for example, to acid reflux. So I wouldn't say it's the number one cause of acid reflux, because that is foods that alter the microbiome causing acid reflux. But H. pylori is a big cause of acid reflux and, not surprisingly, a big cause of perioral dermatitis, because when your body isn't digesting foods properly at the stomach level, the foods become more toxic as they go through the gut, and that leads to perioral dermatitis. So I see this, and so what I'm excited to share with you guys in the series is the patterns are more obvious than ever. They're more consistent than ever. The treatments always work. You know, let's call it 99% of the time we treat H. pylori. Now, if you go to a doctor, the traditional doctor, by the way, H. pylori test, you might say, oh, Dr. Johnson, that's an interesting theory. I have capillaries near my nostril. I do have some stomach problems. Let me go in and get an H. pylori test and see if I have H. pylori. That would confirm your theory. Well, unfortunately, the false negative rate on H. pylori is high. So you go in to get tested. And I even had this, one of my children went in and had an upper scope, and they did a bunch of biopsies looking for H. pylori, and he came back negative as H. pylori. Now, in the end, his problem was H. pylori, but none of the punch biopsies found that bacteria there. And I'm going to tell you, H. pylori is not an infection. You can't pass it from one person to another. H. pylori is a change in the bacteria in the stomach to a, let's just call it, mean version of itself. Scientifically, this is what we call a phenotypic change. So it's not a DNA change. It is not a bacteria changing species. It is a bacteria changing its behavior. And, we'll go into that probably more deeply in the gut series, but I just want you to understand this is an absolute epidemic, and maybe the number one individual cause of it is taking probiotics. Somehow the probiotic influence on your healthy stomach bacteria is negative, and that negative influence changes your stomach bacteria to an H. pylori form, and then you start getting all these other symptoms. So this is just one example of so many of the discoveries you're going to learn about here. We're absolutely going to dive into how to stay young. And so, just addressing that issue. Why are people aging more rapidly than they should? There's a host of reasons. From let's just say, sexual performance. Why? Because we're being inundated with estrogenic chemicals that are altering our hormone balance and changing our sex drive and, changing and causing, impotence and infertility and all of these things. And so that influences part of the aging process, right? Because that's kind of one of the things that I think some of us, myself, like some of us, as we're getting through our 50s and our 60s, like a lower sex drive, they just kind of accept it as part of the territory. I don't think that's inherent in the system. I think a healthy sex drive is part of the joy of life as you carry on through your 60s and 70s and maybe even into your 80s. Who had a funny case the other day of a woman in her 80s who had a rash on her lower lip, and she said, "Don't mind that rash. That's from stubble burn from my husband." And I'm like, "You go, Mrs. 85-year-old with stubble burn around your mouth." And so that's how I think, that's how I want to view this aging process. So what else is influencing aging? We just mentioned that the fluoride in our tap water is lowering your human growth hormone. I'm working on an answer to that, but one of the interesting answers to that is the use of peptides like sermorelin. And this is a precursor to human growth hormone. I do not advise anyone take human growth hormone itself because the side effects related to that, including your own body lowering its growth hormone production in the face of being in these injections. But, there's organ enlargement. There could be bone or muscle enlargement on the face. It can change things. Same thing is true with testosterone supplementation. It can change the size of musculature on the face and cause some abnormalities. It hurts the liver. I know these are like a lot of people swear, no, testosterone doesn't hurt you. But they have to do bloodletting. They actually have to do, go in and drain some of their blood because their blood is thickened by taking testosterone. That right there should tell you there's something wrong with taking exogenous hormones. But no, let's keep going on the aging idea. So as we get into this discussions of aging, you're looking at your human growth hormones going down, your actual other hormones are going down, your thyroid is being pickled either by candida, heavy metals, viruses like Epstein-Barr virus, which causes Hashimoto's. And those are actually the three main ways that your thyroid is being influenced, although there are certainly other chemicals that can have an influence on production. And, we could go down the list of all the different organ systems are being harmed in various ways that are causing a reduction either in collagen production, a reduction in ATP production in your body. We're going to get into ATP. It's a super important molecule in your body produced by the mitochondria. A reduction in how much oxygen you get in. So there's a slow decline in your ability to oxygenate, which influences metabolism, which influences ATP production. All of those things are going to be linked to your aging. When it comes to skin, believe it or not, sunburns are bad, but sun is rejuvenating. And the impact of vitamin D is one thing, but the untold story that I just don't hear enough, and that I have not told enough, that I've become aware of more recently, is the importance of melanin. And yes, the good news for ethnic skin types is that the more melanin you have, the better able you are to manage toxins. However, the downside of having more melanin is it's harder for you to produce vitamin D. So it's not like, ethnicity saves you from all forms of disease. But I can tell you right now, the more melanin you can produce in your system, the better. And every day that you go in the sun, your body produces melanin. And so it's kind of like, and I don't know, I should look into the ability to supplement melanin in your diet and whether or not that is actually a thing. I don't think it is. You could take things like tyrosine, which we have in our supplements. That's going to help your melanin. But what I'm telling you is melanin is one of the best ways to stay young. And one of the best ways for you to increase the melanin in your body, number one, is to go in the sun. Number two is to take my melanin stimulating hormone agonist, which is in our Sun Defense bronzing elixir. So I recommend everybody be taking our Sun Defense bronzing elixir before going into the sun. Whether that's your only form of sun protection or not, you can make that call, but it is going to influence and we actually clinically proved that in a double-blind placebo-controlled trial. So that's one way to increase your melanin. And I'm going to be looking into more ways as I continue to try to figure out ways to improve our health. And so, yes, so how do we keep rejuvenating? Obviously, in order to increase or maintain your skin's ability to heal wounds and to produce collagen and elastin at a youthful pace, you have to increase the food supply to your skin. Well, that involves vasodilation or a widening of the blood vessels of the skin. That involves topical products that have delivery systems because your skin pretty much designed to not let things in if it can help it. So you actually have to come up with a strategy for that. So we're going to go into that. We're going to go into which supplements encourage the body and which supplements are a detriment. Just like a side note, I see, a lot of young kids getting into creatine. Creatine does influence muscle in a positive way temporarily. But the presence of persistent creatine will lower ATP production. So in my opinion, creatine is not a good long-term strategy. You will, anyway, so that's just another things I've learned along the way that I will be sharing with you in this podcast series as it relates to aging. How do you maximize your collagen and elastin production in your skin? How do you improve the loss of growth factors in your skin? How do we, there's a lot of information going on right now about stem cell IV therapy. So we'll get into that in one of our podcasts. We're going to talk about, of course, all the different types of ingredients in skincare and which ones age the skin and which ones don't. So it's going to be fun. We'll start it off with probably going through skin conditions because a lot of people, come and find us because they've got this persistent skin condition they need help with. So I'll probably start the series that way, and then we'll dive into supplements and ingredients to avoid, medications, how they're harming you and why they're not serving you and why it's important to try to get off of them. I just learned some new information, for example, about the medications most frequently prescribed for acid reflux and their long-term impact on the body. You could look at this toxic fad right now for weight loss using drugs like Ozempic that are shown to cause gastroparesis as their method of action. And so what really you're doing is you're starving your body. And that's why the body starts digesting muscle. A significant amount of muscle loss occurs on Ozempic. And that's why the weight loss often isn't maintained. Because once you get off Ozempic, your body's like, oh, I want to rebuild the muscle we lost in that starvation, 6 months of starvation we just went through. So yeah, and not to mention the fact that several people never get their stomach function back after being on that medication. So I've been, since the outset of that fad, an active advocate of stopping that medicine. And or not taking it. So lots of insight. I hope you enjoy. And I appreciate you following me along. And thank you for all the people who have been saying, please get back on the mic. And here we are, 2024. We're heading into a time now where it looks like there's another pandemic looming, although it's coming slower than I thought. And so I'll be giving you advice on that as it shows itself. That series or that effect was from Mycoplasma, which is actually a well-known mild pneumonia causing pathogen. But I'm not sure that this Mycoplasma is the one that we've all known and loved, because my understanding is that it's antibiotic resistant, and it's particularly challenging for kids with compromised immune systems more than any other age range. And so we'll dive into that and we'll see if it materializes. Like I said, the signs were there. China was reporting major backups in their hospitals in the last few months. I haven't heard any more out of China lately. And I knew that there were several hospitals going back to a mask mandate for the staff. And so it looked like it was ramping up. But again, the pace of that ramp up, hard to say. So hopefully we don't go back into that mode where the entire world shuts down. But if we do, we'll be here at Osmosis sharing with you our best advice on how to manage those strategies, keep your immunity strong, what protocols you need to kill the pathogens, and address the side effects of those pathogens, like getting rid of mucus in the lungs and all of those things. So we'll stop there and look forward to seeing you next week with the next podcast. Again, this is the guide to staying young and healthy in a toxic world. And like I said, it starts with awareness of who you need to be watching out for, and then hopefully you dive in to your intuition and you get to the right advice to resolve your problems. So we'll leave it on that. Thanks again, everybody. See you next week. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Ask Dr. Ben. Please leave a review if you can, and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts to get access to all of my upcoming episodes. My website is osmosisbeauty.com, and you can find me on Facebook at osmosisbeauty. And you can also follow me on Instagram at osmosis_beauty. Thanks for listening.